Eben Byers was living the perfect American dream when he made a decision that would turn him into one of the most horrifying cautionary tales in medical history. A wealthy industrialist, a champion golfer, a man who had everything, who slowly rotted from the inside out because he believed his doctor knew best. By the time Eben realized what was happening to him, his jaw had literally fallen off his face. His skull was riddled with holes, and he was still completely conscious, watching his own body dissolve around him. This isn't fiction. This is the true story of how a miracle cure became a death sentence that changed American medicine forever. Hi everyone, Alex Reed here. This story is more terrifying than any medical thriller you've ever seen. It's about trust, money, and how the deadliest poison in America was once sold as the ultimate health tonic. This channel is for people who want the real stories behind the headlines, the dark cases that shaped our world. We're building a community that goes deep into stories that matter. So if you're ready to question everything you think you know about medicine and who you can trust with your life, subscribe now. This story will change how you think about miracle cures forever. Picture America in the 1920s. The economy was booming, science was king, and everyone believed that technology could solve any problem. Just a few decades earlier, scientists had discovered this mysterious new element called radium that actually glowed in the dark. To the American public, radium seemed magical. Here was this substance that contained visible energy, that could make things light up without electricity. If it could do that, imagine what it could do for your health. Companies started putting radium in everything you can imagine. Toothpaste that promised glowing teeth, face creams for radiant skin, energy drinks, even intimate products I won't go into detail about. The problem was simple. In the 1920s America, there were virtually no regulations on what companies could sell as medicine, no safety testing, no government oversight. If you could print convincing advertisements and rent a laboratory, you could sell literally anything to anyone. And Americans bought it eagerly because they trusted science completely. They had no reason to believe that something scientific could be dangerous. Eben Byers was exactly the kind of man who would fall for the perfect scientific solution. Born into wealth in 1880, he was the son of one of America's most successful steel magnates, educated at Yale, amateur golf champion. By his 40s, he was running his father's company and living a life most people could only dream of. Eben was everything you'd expect from a wealthy playboy of the era. He raced horses, played golf at exclusive country clubs, and had a reputation as someone who could charm anyone. He was healthy, wealthy, successful, and apparently irresistible to women. But here's what made Eben particularly vulnerable. He was someone who always wanted to optimize everything. He wanted to be the best golfer, the most successful businessman, the most energetic lover. When someone promised him a way to become even better, even more vital, even more powerful, of course he was interested. In 1927, Eben was 47 years old and living at the absolute peak of American society. He had no way of knowing that one small accident was about to start a chain reaction that would make him famous for all the wrong reasons. Because sometimes, having unlimited money means having unlimited access to things that can kill you. It started with something completely ordinary. In late 1927, Eben was returning from the Harvard-Yale football game on a chartered train. These were the kinds of exclusive events that defined his social circle: expensive, prestigious, and full of people just like him. But sometime during the night, as the train rocked through the darkness, Eben fell from his sleeping berth and injured his arm. Nothing dramatic, nothing that seemed particularly serious. Just a painful fall that left him with persistent aching in his arm. Most people would have iced it, rested it, maybe taken some aspirin. But the pain lingered for weeks, then months. For someone like Eben, who was used to being in perfect physical condition, this kind of ongoing discomfort was intolerable. So he did what wealthy people do when they have a problem. He threw money at it. He consulted the best doctors in New York and Pittsburgh. He tried conventional treatments. Nothing worked. That's when one of his doctors suggested something new, something scientific, something that was generating incredible results for other patients. The doctor's recommendation would kill him. The miracle cure was called Redithor, and it was the brainchild of William Bailey. Bailey presented himself as a doctor, had impressive-looking laboratories, and sold what he claimed was the most scientifically advanced medicine in America. Bailey wasn't a doctor. He was a Harvard dropout who had figured out how to convince wealthy people to pay enormous amounts of money for poison. Redathor was radium dissolved in water. Each small bottle contained radioactive elements that literally glowed with energy. The marketing was brilliant. If the medicine itself was glowing with power, imagine what it could do for your body. Bailey promised that Redathor would cure everything from fatigue to impotence to arthritis. He called it a cure for the living dead, a way to energize your entire system from the inside out. The price reflected its exclusivity. This wasn't medicine for ordinary people. Bailey was actually delivering exactly what he promised. Unlike most quack medicines, Redathor really did contain the radioactive elements advertised on the label. Bailey even offered money to anyone who could prove his product wasn't as radioactive as he claimed. He was guaranteeing that his product was as dangerous as possible. When Eben first tried Redathor, it seemed like magic. Within days, he felt more energetic than he had in months. The pain in his arms seemed to fade. He felt stronger, more vital, more alive. So he kept taking it, not just the recommended dose, but more. Much more. Eben began consuming 3 bottles of Redathor every single day for 3 years straight. Think about that for a moment. The recommended dose of this radioactive water was already dangerous. Eben was consuming 3 times that amount every day for over 1,000 consecutive days. He became obsessed with the stuff. He gave cases of it to his girlfriends, convinced it would improve their health and vitality. He even gave it to his racehorses, thinking it would make them run faster. Eben Byers had become Bailey's perfect customer, wealthy, enthusiastic, and completely convinced that more had to be better. Between 1927 and 1930, Eben consumed approximately 1,400 bottles of radioactive water. His body absorbed massive amounts of radium, far more than any human being had ever been exposed to. But here's the most sinister part. For those 3 years, Eben felt amazing. He was convinced that Redathor was the secret to his continued success and vitality. He had no idea that with every bottle, he was turning his skeleton into a radioactive time bomb. By late 1930, something changed. The energy boost that Eben had come to depend on simply disappeared. He stopped taking Redathor, thinking maybe he just needed a break from the treatment, but the damage was already done. The radium had been absorbed into his bones, where it would stay for the rest of his life, emitting deadly radiation 24 hours a day. The symptoms started gradually: weight loss, chronic headaches. Eben probably thought he was just experiencing normal aging, maybe some stress from business pressures. Then his teeth started falling out. Then his jaw began to disintegrate. By 1931, government investigators had started receiving reports about Redathor. They wanted to interview Eben about his experience, but when their representative arrived at his mansion, what he found was barely recognizable as human. The investigator later described the visit in terms that still make medical professionals shudder. Eben's entire upper jaw had been surgically removed except for 2 front teeth. Most of his lower jaw was gone as well. The remaining bone tissue throughout his body was slowly crumbling, and holes were actually forming in his skull. But the most horrifying detail was that Eben was still completely mentally alert. He understood exactly what was happening to him. He could feel his skeleton dissolving from the inside out, and there was absolutely nothing anyone could do to stop it. The radium had turned his bones into Swiss cheese, and he was conscious for every moment of it. To understand how radium killed Eben Byers, you need to understand one of the most cruel tricks in all of biochemistry. When you ingest radium, your body mistakes it for calcium. Your digestive system helpfully absorbs it and deposits it directly into your bones, where it becomes permanently trapped. Once radium is in your bones, it begins emitting radiation constantly. We're talking about millions of radioactive particles bombarding your bone tissue every single day. Each particle destroys living cells, creating tiny holes that gradually grow larger. The process is invisible and painless at first. Your bone marrow, which produces your blood cells, slowly dies. Your bones themselves begin to crumble from the inside out. By the time you notice symptoms, the damage is irreversible and fatal. Eben had absorbed massive amounts of radium. Later analysis showed he had consumed more than 200 times the amount that scientists now know is lethal. His entire skeleton had become radioactive, emitting deadly energy that was killing him cell by cell. The most cruel aspect of radium poisoning is that once it's in your bones, there's no way to remove it. No treatment, no cure, no hope. The radioactive decay continues for decades long after death. Eben wasn't Bailey's only victim. The radium craze of the 1920s created hundreds of similar tragedies across America. Companies were putting radioactive elements in everything from toothpaste to suppositories, all marketed as health products. The tragedy was amplified by the complete lack of medical regulation. The FDA barely existed. There were no requirements for safety testing, no oversight of medical claims, no protection for consumers. If you could afford to set up a laboratory and print convincing advertisements, you could sell anything to anyone. The public's blind faith in science made them perfect victims. People assumed that if something was scientific and expensive, it had to be safe and effective. The idea that doctors or scientists might be wrong, or worse, deliberately deceptive, was almost unthinkable. What made Eben's case particularly significant was his social status. When working-class factory workers died from radium exposure, their deaths were largely ignored. But when a wealthy, prominent socialite began rotting from the inside out, suddenly the entire country paid attention. Bailey had built a business empire selling poison to people who trusted him completely, and Eben Byers became the face of just how catastrophically wrong that trust could go. Eben Byers died on March 31, 1932, at the age of 51. His death sent shockwaves through American society, not just because of how he died, but because of who he was. This wasn't some anonymous victim. This was a prominent businessman whose horrific end couldn't be hidden or ignored. The publicity surrounding his death effectively ended the radium medicine industry overnight. The Federal Trade Commission immediately shut down Bailey's company and banned the sale of Radithor. More importantly, Eben's death became a rallying cry for stronger medical regulation. In 1938, Congress passed the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which dramatically expanded the government's power to regulate medications and require safety testing before products reach the market. That law, which still protects us today, exists in large part because of what happened to Eben Byers. When Eben was buried, his coffin had to be lined with lead to contain the radiation that would continue emanating from his body. 33 years later, in 1965, researchers exhumed his remains to study the long-term effects of radium exposure. His bones were still so radioactive that they posed a significant health hazard to anyone who handled them. Even in death, Eben Byers remained a warning about the dangers of unregulated medicine. The story of Eben Byers raises uncomfortable questions that are just as relevant today as they were in 1932. First, there's the obvious lesson about miracle cures. If something promises to solve all your problems with no side effects, you should be deeply skeptical. Real medicine involves trade-offs and risks that should be honestly discussed. But there's a deeper issue about wealth and medical exploitation. Eben could afford the most expensive, most exclusive treatment available, and that's exactly what killed him. Sometimes having unlimited resources means having unlimited access to dangerous things. Consider this. In the 1920s, radium was the ultimate health trend. It was cutting-edge, expensive, exclusive, and endorsed by people with impressive credentials. It promised to optimize your health and enhance your performance in ways that seemed almost magical. Sound familiar? Today we have our own versions of Radithor, unregulated supplements that promise miraculous results. Wellness treatments with no scientific backing. Social media influencers selling products that can actually harm you. The regulatory environment is much better now, but human nature hasn't changed. We still want to believe that there are simple solutions to complex problems, especially if those solutions are expensive enough to make us feel special. Eben Byers died because he trusted people who prioritized profit over safety, and because he had enough money to poison himself with the very best poison available. So here's what I want you to think about. What are the modern equivalents of Radithor? What health trends or miracle products do you see today that might be our generation's radioactive water? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Some of your insights have inspired future episodes. If you want the real stories behind the medical breakthroughs that shaped our world, both the triumphs and the disasters, warrants make sure you're subscribed. This channel exists for viewers who appreciate thoroughly researched, honestly told stories. Thanks for watching, and remember, when someone promises you a miracle cure, the smartest thing you can do is ask what they're not telling you.